Open quote. I didn't understand you meant all this would be accomplished by the value of the dollar increasing alone. If people start getting paid to get groceries, then what incentive do they have to work at the supermarket? Close quote. Now this is a very interesting question, statement, topic. I was actually talking to an older bloke yesterday about this very idea, the idea of a lack of incentive to work or contribute in society due to having one's resources supplied to them via, financial support, welfare, etc. So fundamentally, that is to say, the theory, there is definite correlation, but there's never been any scientific test to prove causation. So it's a theory, it's not a fact, but it's a theory that intuitively makes sense, that fundamentally, if you pay for somebody to live, you pay for their food, you give them money, etc., to look after themselves, then you take away their drive, their will to actually go and work and earn money for themselves. And so the theory is, and this is what I was discussing with an older bloke yesterday, is that if you simply give people money to live, then they become lazy or they won't contribute, Now, I would say that this theory is incorrect, and I would present the evidence of just simply myself. Like, I've been receiving welfare for a long time, but I still work, and a lot of the time I'll do work for people for no pay, just because I want to work to help somebody get a job done, and I don't get paid for it at all. Alright? So, if anything, I actually probably get paid less than the work I'm doing. So, in my own case, that's definite evidence that there isn't a lack of incentive to work because I'm receiving welfare. But it's a very interesting topic, very interesting question. I think there's more to it. I think people they're definitely getting a lack of incentive to work. But I'm pretty sure a lack of incentive to work comes from something a lot deeper than either being supplied with or without resources. Because again, there's people like myself who are getting free resources, yet we still work. And we'll even do work for no pay. Yet there's lots of people who, work for their resources, yet they still don't really have an incentive to do that work. They feel like they have to. This also comes to an interesting point in regards to freedom of humans and slavery, right? Fundamentally, human beings should be allowed to exist without having to work, all right? Lots of people seem to just assume that how dare you say that? You have to work, you have to pull your weight, otherwise you don't deserve to have anything. But I'm here to tell you that's a slave mentality. And that if you live in a slave system as a slave, and you've been bred as a slave in a slave system, brainwashed from birth to not know that you're a slave in a slave system, then you will think, yes, that people shouldn't be able to have houses and cars and all these nice things unless they go to work. Because that's a good way to keep a slave as a slave, to have them think that they shouldn't be allowed to exist unless they're working as a slave. Because that keeps them working as a slave. You see, if people knew that you could just have everything you want, but you don't have to work for it, all humans on the planet, we can have this. Everything's created for free on this planet. Right? All the resources come from space, essentially, for free. So no human owns the resources or the planet. All right? Nobody has to pay for anything. So nobody actually has to work. And in fact, most jobs, most work, quote-unquote work, is done by robots these days. All right, so the amount of labor that humans do in this age is like nothing compared to even 100 years ago. People actually had to do a bit of work 100 years ago because we didn't have all the robots and stuff we have now, machines. But the amount of robots and machines we have now, humans don't actually have to work. And we can still all just get paid our wages and just live abundantly and have everything we want. We don't actually have to work for it. Okay? So it's a common idea, if you're raised as a slave in a slave system, to be a slave and to keep yourself enslaved, all right, with your own slave mentality and the thoughts you've been brainwashed with since childhood, right? It makes perfect sense if you're a slave in a slave system like this, that you would think that you have to work to make a living, that you have to be a slave, you have to slave away to be able to feed yourself, to have a home, etc., to have fuel for your car. You have to go slave away. If you were raised as a slave in a slave system, you might think that's normal. Or that's just how things are, or how things should be, or that's just fair, or I'm being lazy or something. All right? Again, that would be perfect. That makes perfect sense. If you're a slave in a slave system, if everything I'm saying is 100% correct, then that's what you would think. You would think you have to go to work in order to pay your way, to pay your bills. Because that's what a slave would be taught in a slave system. But again, as I've just pointed out, somebody like myself is evidence that receiving free things isn't a lack of incentive to work. So fundamentally, there's this big argument. Greedy people who own the banks and stuff and their politician mates, they argue and they say, oh no, we can't give the poor people food, we can't give the poor people homes and look after the poor people, the homeless people living in poverty, homeless children. No, we can't help them. Why? Why can't we help the starving homeless children? Oh, because that'll take their incentive away to work. That will make them lazy bludgers. If we feed the starving homeless children, that will make them to grow up to be lazy bludgers on welfare, and they won't want to get a job. So we can't feed the starving homeless children. Let's just let them all fucking die. All right, that's the argument. Stay a slave. Don't feed the starving homeless children. All right? Don't save in Australia, that help fix up, bring more resources, help the children in Aboriginal rural communities. No, just ignore them. Why? Oh, because if you help them and give them more, that'll make them lazy. They reckon? That's their excuse. All right? Keep everyone enslaved as slaves, living on scraps, and let the children who are homeless and, struggling, starve to death. Why? Because, we don't want them to be lazy. They got to be hard workers. So obviously, if you really think about it, it's just a slave system and a slave mentality. Nobody has to be going to work. Okay? We have enough resources, we have enough machinery, robots, they do everything, all the hard labour, all right? And all the other labour that people are doing, all right, that we don't have robots to do at the moment, the jobs people actually need to keep doing at the moment. There's not many left. There's a few. But those specific jobs, those people doing those jobs should be making billions of dollars every year. All right? So if you are a human being still working on this planet, you should be a millionaire in a couple of weeks. Or you're being robbed. You're a slave. Okay? So if you can't just live, if you can't get a house, basic resources, get free food every day, without having to work for it, you're a slave. And if you're going to work and you're not making millions in a few weeks and becoming a billionaire, you're literally a slave in a slave system. And anyone can look at the numbers, and you can go back to the old gold standard and you can see the inflation yourself, where the value of money was divided by 100 in the past 50 years. So if you just take away that what does that mean? That means you add 2 zeros to everything you own. So if you have, it's pretty straightforward basic maths. inflation and deflation, okay, we should have normal, in a healthy normal economy, and this isn't even counting the modern technology or anything we have now, all right? So it would actually be higher than this. But just going off the technology that we had in the 1800s, just to be conservative with the numbers, all right? So it would be exponentially better than this. But I'm just going off the technology we had in the 1800s. Using those numbers, the value of money, all right, increases every year by at least 3%, minimum 3%. And wages increase by 3% minimum every year. All right, that was even in the 1800s when cunts didn't even have cars. All right, prices were dropping, wages were increasing by a minimum 3% every year, even before we had fucking cars, when cunts were getting around on horses. So now that we have cars and stuff and a bit more technology than cunts getting around on horses and boats, I'm pretty sure we can make more profits now, yeah? I'm pretty sure we save more energy and human labour, because machines do a fuckload more because we actually have machines. So that means that deflation and the raising wages yearly would be far greater than 3%. It would be 3% if we still had horse carts and boats, all right? It would still be at 3%. But we have electricity now. We have cars. We have internet. We have phones, all right? So that means deflation should be going down at a rate of far greater than 3% every year. So that means your wage should be going up more than 3% a year, and all of your costs should be going down more than 3% every year. So if you take into some folk don't want to count in the artificial inflation over the past 50 years, because obviously that's going to create issues with fiat bankers, corrupt bankers and their militias around the world. Look how they treat a country like North Korea, who actually has a healthy economy because they haven't got the inflation of the fiat system. All right? They're not liked by many other countries, are they? So obviously there's issues with that. And you become an outcasted nation like North Korea if you're not a part of the global system and in that slave system. All right, and you'll be evil, you'll be painted as, all these things. They'll probably try to go to war with your nation and stuff. Fair enough. So perhaps it's better not to try to, switch that 100 times inflation straight away and make your average, weekly income, 100 grand by next year. At what it should be right now. Like if you're going to work right now, if we weren't being robbed, and we didn't have that 100 times inflation, right now you'd be making 100 grand every week at your job. Easy. So if we just ignore that, because again that could create wars and things with the corrupt elites who run the globalist system and want to keep us enslaved. Again, look what they've done with North Korea. Look what they did with all the Middle East. Why do you think we all had all the wars in the Middle East recently? A few countries in the Middle East, they said exactly what I'm saying right now. And they fixed their economy. So we went to war and we destroyed their countries. So, okay, maybe we shouldn't do it so fast. And we should do it, because we don't want it to happen like what happened in the Middle East and be destroyed because we tried to fix their economy. And again, they'll lie and they'll make up excuses and say, oh, it was weapons of mass destruction, or North Korea is evil, or, they make up all these excuses. They're not going to just tell the world, oh, we just blew these cunts up because they fixed their economy and they didn't want to be our slaves anymore. Yeah? But if you look at all the recent wars in the world, and then you actually go into the details, you can see, oh, what happened? Oh, they fixed the economy. And then as well, you look, when JFK was assassinated, what was JFK just about to do before he was assassinated? Exactly what I'm saying right now. This is literally what JFK said in his speech a week before he got assassinated. Okay? So I'm not going to suggest that that's the reason, but I'm just putting it out there. That's a big coincidence, don't you think? North Korea is evil because they said they're doing exactly what JFK was going to do. JFK got assassinated a week after he said exactly this. All the recent wars in the Middle East are because the countries did what JFK and North Korea done. So every cunt in the world that's ever done this for the past 50 years or so, they got fucked up by the global elites and the banking buddies, alright? So I understand people's hesitation. They don't want to just jump into fixing the economy, because then that would make Australia national enemy number one of the entire planet and would probably have World War III. Fair enough. Okay, I'm not dumb. I can understand that's a very serious thing to think about and plan for. Alright? But we can't just remain slaves because we've been intimidated and threatened by global elites and tyrants who will, threaten to go to war and destroy our nation if we don't remain slaves in their global slave system. To be honest, I'd rather fight and die on my feet than live as a coward on my knees. Each to their own when it comes to that type of thing. But I can understand people's hesitation, and you can't just run head first into something like that. If you're going to be willing to die on your feet, you got to have tact and you got to have strategy. Otherwise, you're dying for nothing. All right? You want to actually have a chance of winning if you're going to put your neck on the line. So how can we have a chance of winning? All right, it would make sense, yes. We just go from now, what we have now, the corrupt scam prices and economy we have now, where everything's 100 times worse than it should be. So you only get like $1,000 on average instead of 100,000 weekly income, what you should get right now. Okay? So instead of trying to fix that, again, because of all of what I just said, it'll start World War III if we fix the economy straight away. They'll literally try to kill us all, like they've done to lots of countries around the world recently, in the past few decades. So we can't just jump straight into it. But we can fix the economy slowly, and then actually by, the next 10 years, double your weekly income. And then that way we'll avoid the elite tyrants trying to start war with Australia and destroy our nation like they did to, again, countries recently in the Middle East. We've all grown up with the wars in the Middle East, and that's what that was all about. They tried to fix their economy. And as well, like Gaddafi, he actually did it, and then he was assassinated as well, because he actually managed to fix his economy. And he did exactly what I said. So that's what I'm saying. We can't do it as quick as what these guys try to do it. Because they will just go to war with their nation and destroy everything and kill us all. Or assassinate leaders, etc. Okay? Again, they assassinated JFK. They assassinated Gaddafi. Look at all the wars in the Middle East. Nobody can deny what I'm saying here. We've all lived through this history. Anyone alive on the planet now, we've all lived through this. This is well-known stuff. Everyone knows who JFK is. Everyone's heard about the assassination of JFK, the American president getting shot in the head. Yeah? Everyone's heard about it. It was even like on The Simpsons and things. This is common knowledge everyone knows about. All right? Not everyone knows the speech he gave the week before he was assassinated and the reason. Again, I'm not going to say it's the reason, but hypothetically, let's just put it out there. It possibly was. You can decide for yourself. I hope you can think. Well, you're a free thinker. It's pretty obvious. So, taking all of that into consideration, it's not free resources that creates a lack of incentive to work. What creates a lack of incentive to work is a lack of purpose, a lack of drive. Nobody wants to change the world. Nobody wants to save humanity. If you don't want to get out in the world and save the world or help people or be a hero, just be a hero. All right? Even a lot of people, when they hear that, they'll be like, oh, be a hero. That sounds like something like on a Marvel movie. No, a hero means you live in a way and where you will sacrifice yourself or your own, your own enjoyment to help someone or save someone else's life if the opportunity arises. So say you're walking down the street and some chick's getting raped. A hero runs in, kicks the cunt in the head and saves that woman's life. All right? If you're fishing and somebody's dog falls off the boat and their dog's drowning, and you jump in the river and you save their bloody dog, you're a fucking hero. All right? If people were taught to live with that type of attitude, then there wouldn't be a day where there wasn't a job to get done, would there? Because there's always shit happening in the world that needs to be fixed. There's always people that need helping. So if people actually had the attitude of being a hero, then they would never not have an incentive to work, because a hero always has a job to get done. Alright? So it's not the free resources or not having free resources that creates a lack of incentive to work. It's a lack of heroism, a lack of courage that creates a lack of incentive to work. So if we want people to work harder, we need to teach people to be heroes, to have purpose, to actually have something to work for. If you have nothing to work for, then you can't have an incentive to work. But if you live as a hero, you always have something to work for and towards. There's always a job to be done. So you can't not work. Even if you get everything for free, you still go work for no pay, because there's always a job to be done. Alright? Again, this is just my theory I'm putting across. But I'm pretty sure the original theory of incentive to work is reduced if you get free things is just wrong. And I'm pretty sure the people who show those signs when they get free stuff and then they don't want to work and they just end up being lazy, the reason isn't because they're getting the free stuff. And they'd be exactly the same even if they didn't get the free stuff. They'd be just as lazy. The reason they're lazy isn't because they're getting free things, it's because they haven't got a drive to get any jobs done, to actually get out in the world and do anything. They're not motivated. They have no purpose. So if somebody has no purpose and no drive, it doesn't matter if you give them free stuff or if you don't. They have no purpose and they have no drive. But again, it makes perfect sense if you are a slave, brought up in a slave system, conditioned and raised from childhood to just be a worker slave in in the machine, a cog in the machine, right? Just to be used and then replaced and discarded, right? If that's what you are and that's what you were raised to be in a slave system, then of course you would think that, people who get stuff for free are just lazy. And we need to have a lack. We need to be robbed of our things. We need elites to take our stuff and rob us with taxes and things, keep robbing us so we have nothing left, so we have an incentive to go work for more. Because otherwise we'd be lazy. Right? If you think about it, that makes perfect sense. That's exactly what a slave would think. Because that's how they keep themselves enslaved in a free-range slave system. So, to answer the question, if people start getting paid to get groceries, then what incentive do they have to work at the supermarket? To summarize this, to sum it up, if you're working, just generally, if you work to get money, or to afford food, or to afford anything, if you're working so that you can afford anything, that's the definition of a slave. You're working to exist. So if you're not a slave, this shouldn't even be a question. Well, if everyone's paid and they just get free everything, why would anyone go to work? Why would somebody go work down at Woolies? If you're a slave, you'd ask that question. If you're a free human being, you don't even ask that question, because what do you mean? They'd go to work down at Woolies to work at Woolies. Because that's what they want to do. Some people like to talk to people and they meet new people and they like to, that's just what they like to do. Stand there and talk to people at a cash register all day. They got nothing else to do and that's what they enjoy doing. Even if they had everything in the world, they'll still just go there, stand at that fucking cash register and talk to people all day and just, scan your items and stuff. Because that's just what they want to do. People just do things sometimes. You don't have to have pay. You don't need to be doing something for income. And wouldn't the world be a better place if everybody just did what they wanted to do and enjoyed themselves?